Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. And today, I am really excited to have with me on the line Wylie McGraw. Wylie is a former star athlete, competitive bull rider, 3-tour combat veteran, and the secret weapon of some of the most influential leaders across various industries. As the founder of Radical Performance Acceleration, he's spent over a decade helping powerful CEOs, entrepreneurs, leaders, and public figures accelerate their performance both personally and professionally. So, this is going to be an excellent conversation today. Wylie, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Jeff, I'm really happy to be here with you, brother. I'm looking forward to diving in with you.
Cool, man. So, I need to hear about this backstory, right? Because it seems like you've just done everything. Right. You served in our military,
Yeah.
and also, being an athlete and a bull rider, like,
Yep.
how does that come about? I really need to hear this origin story.
Sure. And I want to make sure that I keep it short and sweet because so that we can get to the meat. But I grew up around my father was a semi-pro ball player. So I grew up in that atmosphere, and he recognized the talent that I had at a very young age. I had an arm just like he did, and cultivated it. So I became baseball focused. That was my primary sport. That was everything that I did. I lived it. I breathed it. I ate it and slept it. I was a pitcher, starting pitcher. I started on every team that I played on, and I cultivated that arm that I had. But as I became even more successful in my endeavors as a pitcher, I started to pay attention to the stresses that were placed upon me, the perfectionism that was expected of me to be hyper focused on that one skill and that one skill only. And I never really was allowed to expand more into the environments of who I was as a young man growing up. And I wanted to make sure that I emphasize this, that hyper focused skill started to wear on me. And I realized as I got older, Jeff, as an athlete, that I was playing not for the love of the game, but for my father's expectation and the expectation of the pros that were around me. I mean, I knew people like Mickey Mantle. I was introduced to him by my father, Bo Jackson, Rod Carew, who's another legend for the California Angels. And I was coached by the Angels pitching staff at one point in my life. So I had this path that I was expected to be on to become a pro ball player. But that waxed and waned as I got older, and I realized that this was not who I wanted to be. I was not doing it for the love of why I wanted to do it or the love of the game. And it eventually led me into this world where I started to hang out with a different crowd. I started to meet professional rodeo cowboys, and they lured me in. It was this seductive energy about bull riding that got me excited and started to ignite more of the inside of who I was. And I found in rodeo this real world, almost scary environment where you were full of unknowns. Bull riding is full of unknowns. You have no idea what's going to happen. It started to unleash this inner beast that I'd been waiting to meet as a young man. And I found in that environment more access to my power and my potential. I started to feel that challenge every time I rode was what I really needed to stretch who I was and actually become even more optimized in my abilities. And I found my understanding of my power and its effects on those around me and on my ability to stay focused and achieve more for my life. And I got turned on by that environment. And I rode bulls for a very long time. I did a lot of competition style type rodeos. And it was in the embracing and yielding to the fear of the unknowns that were present in that rodeo world, I started to feel more alive and more in tune with myself. My mindset shifted, my intuition became more ignited, and I found this holistic ability started to evolve who I was as a man. And eventually I got to the point where I said, I want more. I need new real world challenge. And that's when the military came knocking and I joined the United States Army. I was stationed with the 101st Airborne Division, one of the most prestigious units in the United States military. I was a combat infantryman, became a combat infantry leader, and I did 3 tours overseas where I started to discover my own gifts and my own understanding of blind spots and how it affects performance as a leader, what I was capable of accomplishing and getting people to actually transform themselves in the midst of the most chaotic situations. And I went to Kosovo, Afghanistan, and Iraq. And in Afghanistan, I really honed in on that skill and started to become more aware of why human performance is so much more than our own systems and strategies that we place upon ourselves and the expectations that we have. And that people of leadership in the schools that I went to need real world challenge, like you and I talked about earlier before the show started, on being put in those positions in a very contained environment so that you can really accelerate and blow past your limits. And it just turned me on to self-mastery and exploring more of who I was when I got out of the military so that I can turn around and create this business around my gifts and my skills and go out into the world and start to really move the needle when it comes to leadership development, high performance, and getting people to the most optimal state of their being so they can experience that same level of peace and freedom that I accomplished with their successes.
So I want to explore this a little bit because uh, what you were telling me about, like being in, like being in the military
Yeah,
and being put in these positions where you have to make snap decisions and you have to make the right snap decisions at the right time. It's basically a leadership school, right? And I get it. Like anytime you're focusing on excellence at one or a very small set of accomplishments, like you really need to be on top of your game. But how do you how do you ascertain what is the best path for you to go down in order to make that? Now, obviously, like you have a target in the military that you have to accomplish, right?
sure.
But at the same time, like you have to you need a hyper focused situational awareness. You need to know exactly what's going on, not just this narrow focus, this blinder vision of what you have. You need to know what's
Right.
going on beyond, above and beyond and around and behind you and all that. How did those experiences help you figure out that this is what is needed, not only for your safety and for you to achieve your goals, but also to translate that, as a performance accelerator, when you're talking to CEOs and other high performers, you need to be able to communicate that to them as well. So how does all that manifest itself when you're teaching people how to transcend, like those limiting beliefs that they have, going forward?
Right. So I just touch on what you talked about in the military, and anybody that's listening to this that served in the military would probably relate to this and understand this. Is in those hyper states of operation when we're in the middle of combat. You're right. We have to make decisions, split decisions, and we have to calculate instantly the risk to reward ratio. And when you become a leader, especially in the combat arms field, despite whether it's Army Rangers, Army Combat Infantry, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, etc., we're all in the same vein when it comes to how we operate. And it's understanding overall holistic team function at the same time while paying attention to how you feel, what you're thinking, the environment, and how the environment's showing up. So you create an optimized state of operating from your ability to pay attention to the idea that slow is smooth, smooth is fast. It's not about slowing things down and kind of taking your time because you can't. It's about understanding how to slow down that critical thinking skill set that you have, understanding where your team's limitations might play out in the middle of that combat situation, and knowing how to move them into action despite those limitations so that they can push past them and they can complete their objective simultaneously. So I lead that into understanding for your audience is that I discovered in combat that true self mastery, being able to pay attention to the stresses that you're under, how it affects your mindset, how it affects your emotions, how to utilize your emotions in any given situation, knowing when and where those stresses are in fact hindering your performance versus helping your performance. That self mastery is a key component that tends to be overridden or overlooked, especially in leadership when we get out of the military. And in my experience, being a performance accelerator, is I have built something around the optimized state of my life and understanding who I am at the core, where my power resides from. Like I said with bull riding, is I knew how my power was affecting those around me. So I constantly stay focused on how well I'm living my life is in fact going to determine the results of my relationships and the things that I look to create and innovate. So as I work with these leaders, and I want to share with your audience again, is I'm not your typical coach. I'm appealing to those people who want to go far beyond just the bottom line. They want to go far beyond the accumulation aspect. I've worked for 13 years behind the scenes with leaders, and I've seen it time and time again. They have accumulated everything, but yet they are looking at their life going, but yeah, something's still missing. I don't feel satisfied or fulfilled. I don't know why that's even possible given who I am and what I create and what I do and lead. And I come to the table saying, here's the aspect that you're overriding or overlooking, is you and not have brought balance into your life. You have created imbalance because of your incessant desire to accumulate. And I'm asking you to just take a step back and to get into the nook and cranny of who you are, what stress you have basically held on to your entire life as you climb that ladder of success, and going after those ugly truths so that we can eradicate them and watch how every aspect of your life then accelerates, and that what you go out and create and innovate becomes even more profound and impactful for the society that you're looking to lead. So I want to, make sure that that's landing with everyone is understanding yourself in those types of environments, and how you live your life is going to, in fact, determine even more results that you look to achieve.
You bring up a really good point, and one of the things that we were talking about as well in the pre-call is the difference between helping yourself and optimizing yourself, right? Because it's one thing that, like anyone can be a course junkie. You can spend 10,
Sure.
20, $50,000 on courses and on coaches and all
Millions.
that. And none of the, like, if you don't apply it, if you don't do the work, right, then you're really just enriching other people. I mean, let's be honest,
Sure. I
right?
love it.
And
Yeah.
one of the things that fascinates me about coaching in particular, but also about like hacking yourself and optimizing yourself, is that there are really some specific techniques that that you need to apply, and one of them is by it's not the accumulation of knowledge, right? It's what you do with that knowledge. And also it's the type of knowledge that you discard, that you no longer need anymore, so that you can go and focus on the other things. It's like,
Right.
in my career, I used to be a Microsoft certified systems engineer, an
Uh-huh.
MCSE. Oh dear God, I
Oh, I
haven't
bet.
I haven't even spoken that in so long, right? And I'm sitting there like, like now it's like you put me in front of a Windows computer, like I barely know how to turn the damn thing on, right? And
Mhm.
like for me, it's been so liberating to be able to let that kind of knowledge just dissipate, but to be able to move forward and have this be able to focus on other things. I tell people that I think I'm in like my fifth or sixth career reinvention, on where I am right now from all the other things that I've done. Anyone can go and look at my LinkedIn profile to see how that works.
Sure.
But what I'm really interested in is, how do you help people optimize their
Mm.
lives and their performance, as opposed to
Mhm.
just helping them or accumulate more knowledge because of that?
Well, I'm glad that you brought that up, and I wanna land this really quick for those that are listening, and this is what I appeal to those that are paying attention to more than just that accumulation aspect of growth. And we have this paradigm. I would say the benchmark is taught that the more money you make, the more notoriety you can create, the more successful you are. And it's like, stop in your tracks right now. If you're listening to this and you want more than just that, pay attention, because there is a massive difference between helping someone versus optimizing them. You don't help someone optimize. You either optimize them or you just help them. And if you think about those two words, help, it has an energy of creating some movement for someone, giving them those tips and those tricks and those strategies, those hacks, if you will. And I've known some of the leaders in the biohacking industry as well, and they talk about this human performance. It's like, well, there's more to it than just trying to hack your biology. There's understanding stresses, understanding relationship dynamics, looking at things from your past that are in fact suppressing your power and potential. But to go back to what you said, I optimize leaders. I've worked with people from Wall Street to Hollywood, professional sports. I work with billionaires, multimillionaires, and I come into their life because they're at a fork in the road where they're done with the overwhelm and the burnout and the chaos that ensues in their life, despite how much they've accumulated. So what I'm able to do is I come into their life. I work in a very intimate dynamic with them. This is not a program or a process. They don't follow cookie cutter steps with me. Every aspect of their life is focused on. No stone is left unturned. And what ends up happening is they face those truths, those demons, as I call them. They eradicate, we blow through the limits and eradicate stresses. And what results is an unleashing of more of their power and potential that has otherwise been hidden behind all of that stress, all of that accumulation, all of that compensation that they've basically endured their entire life. And what ends up happening is they experience growth in their relationships, in their impact, in their bottom line. And if you're looking for bottom line, I'm talking about money, margin, profit, growth, and scale, whatever label fits that. But I've worked with these people that have the fame, the notoriety, the major investments. They worked with large corporations. And what I've found is that these people have accumulated more than just that stuff. They have accumulated stress and chaos, and they don't know what to do with it. And what's required of them to blow past those limits, actually eradicate that, goes far beyond that helping field, which is our typical personal development industry. Those, like you said, we can get lost in those programs, and we can be program junkies, and we can get caught in the cycle of endless frustration and spending more and more money. I met a guy that spent $2 million on personal development. Despite all of that, he's still in pain. He's still struggling. He's still stressed out. And despite the fact that he's a multi-millionaire, runs one of the largest groups in the world, it's like, why did you spend $2 million and still feel the way you feel? It's because you haven't done the real work, the very uncomfortable work that it takes to become optimized. And we get wrapped up in the idea that I can just keep buying into the help. I can just keep adding more into my life. And I'm here to tell people that are listening to your show, Jeff, it's time to start focusing on how you can remove what doesn't optimize you or what doesn't actually grow you or accelerate you. Look at the things in your life that are in fact hindering you instead of trying to add more in to overlook or overcome that feeling. And that's the most important aspect that people are overriding or overlooking right now, is what I need to remove from my life so that I can free up more power, more potential to be utilized for my growth, for my success.
You know what's interesting is that I was at the Funnel Hacking Live conference a few
Yeah.
months ago,
Yeah.
and Tony Robbins was there, and it was the first
Yeah.
time I saw Tony live. And what's interesting about it is that when you watch Tony on TV, right, it's very easy to just be like, "Pff, all right, the guy's just gonna fluff you up and just curse at you a lot, and But once you're there in person, like first of all, the energy is infectious, right? But also, it's like the one thing that I came away from, he spoke for about 5 hours. I mean, the guy spoke
Sure he
straight,
did.
for
Yeah.
5 hours, very high energy. But what was interesting was that what do you do with all that with that new charge that you get
Sure.
after
Oh, I love what you're
after
going.
appearing
Yep.
after attending, right? Because on the one hand you can be like, yeah, it's great, I'm pumped up, I can do anything, but that's not necessarily a great focus, right?
No.
Because all you did was you just transferred energy. I mean, you see the likes of Gary
Thank
Vee
you.
as well. It's like you get this what do you call it? Yeah,
It's
you
you
can
get
get
high
lost in
on
the
the
hustle
energy.
culture.
You get
Yeah, you
high
can
on
get
the
high
energy.
on the energy.
Yeah.
So how do you help people sort of isolate that? It's like, okay, yeah, you
Yeah.
paid you paid $1 million to be in Tony's program.
Yeah,
Great,
exactly. Oh, I love it.
right? But what comes next?
I love that you're bringing that up, Jeff, and I want everybody that's listening to this is so I think intuitively symbiotic here, because I have worked with so many people who have paid Tony $1 million. I've actually worked with some of Tony's close personal friends. You think about a big name marketer, info marketer, or life coach. I probably know them or have worked with them, and so I want to make sure I'm identifying the fact that I understand who Tony is. I've been around him for a very long time with some of the people that are in his circles. And you're right. What ends up happening, and this is the personal development industry, this is why I wrote the paper Helping versus Optimizing, and why people are chasing peak performance instead of mastering it, is knowing the differences of why that, like you said, transference. They are on stages transferring their motivational spirit into you. And what ends up happening is you buy into that hype. You get really stimulated by that energy. You go home feeling like you can accomplish anything because this big guy said so to you. And then you end up after a while going, something's still missing. And let me go buy his program again. Let me go back into that energy again, because that's where I felt the most alive. But that's not real transformation. Real transformation is ugly, it's destructive, it's uncomfortable, and it happens in the dark corners. It will never happen when you're in this 3,500 person or 14,000 person stadium event where everybody's jumping around, hugging each other, and getting motivated by this one household name. It doesn't mean that what he does or has done has not had an impact or has given people momentum. But if you are the type of person, executive, entrepreneur, business owner, marketer, etc., leader who's listening to this, who wants to take a step far outside of that typical notion of helping, you've got to step into a world of optimizing. And if you need to, go read that paper, because that is what's going to start challenging your thinking. It's going to stimulating more of your insight and understanding what you're actually capable of has just been missing because you've been bought into that hype. And you got to realize that the real work is very uncomfortable. It is not fun, but it is what's going to get you to the top of your game sooner than later. And I want to relate this, if I may, Jeff, to the military. Is, I had a podcast host ask me, he goes, a bunch of my entrepreneurs are going to hear this and say, you're going to make me do all of that. I don't want to do that. And I go, exactly. That's the attitude and the mindset that entrepreneurs and business owners have when it comes to facing the real work that it's going to take them to the top of their game. Yet they want to say, I want all of this success, but they're unwilling to do the most uncomfortable work. They want to go to the things that feel good, that are, hypey, more like, easy to kind of navigate and chew on. And I'm here to say, well, that's not going to get you to peak performance. You really want peak performance? You've got to do the ugly stuff. But not very many people want to do that. Not many people can become a Navy SEAL. Not many people can become a Green Beret, but the military puts people like us through those most intense environments and experiences so they can really weed us out and challenge us to see what we're truly capable of in any given scenario. And that's why only a few can make it. And I'm saying, hey, if you're in this world to create massive impact and you want to transform people's lives and you want to make great money while you do it, there's so much more that you have to be willing to step into than just buying into those types of hype programs. And not very many people can apply what they're taught by people like Tony Robbins into their lives. A small percentage succeeds, but the rest of them, especially celebrities that I've met, these people that go on a camera and say, hey, I was a Tony Robbins. He did some great stuff for me. It's like, did he really? Or are you just promoting something because it feels good to be wrapped up in a circle of the same type of, I would say high level influencer, energy. And I'm here to go stop it, because what's incredibly important is shifting that paradigm and that mindset into a new approach to your business.
What's cool about what you're saying here is that who's going to be embarrassed and be like, oh, I paid Tony $1 million and it didn't work, right?
So
Nobody's said no one ever, right? Or I paid Wylie, X amount of money and it didn't work. Some of you didn't do the work. Bottom line, that's what we're talking about here. And, I really like how you illustrate that the real work happens in the dark corners, because that, first of all, that really wouldn't make a good course introduction, right? If you were to tell somebody, well, I'm going to take you to all these dark corners and, that's how you're going to be a peak performer, you're probably not going to sell as much. But when you explain to people how, what's going to be the outcome afterwards,
sure,
that's where the prestige is going to come from.
Yeah. And if I want to throw this in real quick before I forget the thought here, it's if you don't crave peace and harmony, balance and freedom with your successes, number one, I'm not for you.
For what?
Okay. Because at the end of the day, if you enjoy the drama and chaos and stress and burnout that comes along with your level of success, go for it. Unfortunately, you're only going to get so far. And really, that's not something to emulate. If you really are a human being that goes, look, I don't know what it's like to have peace in my life and balance as I'm succeeding at the level I am, then great. Then you have to step into a whole new world. You have to be willing to face truths that you otherwise have overlooked. And the strategy in utilizing resources that just help you along the way, has what's been I would say the impetus that has skewed people's life and their business. And these leaders I've met behind the scenes, I've pulled their curtain back and I've seen all the destructive chaos that they just basically carry around with them. And then they're going to stand on stages and tell you how to have the best life ever and how to grow your business. You should take your yearly revenue and make it your monthly revenue. Well, it's like, hold on a second. What is it necessary for everybody to do that? Is that truly a strategy that everybody in business needs to try to apply to themselves? And people get overworked trying to take what somebody else has done and put it into their life. And they forget who they are. They don't know where their true power and potential resides, and they end up feeling limited and stuck. And the limitations are placed upon you because you are caught up in the idea that because someone else was able to do it this way, I need to do it that way as well. And I'm going, stop. And for me, it's like, you're right. Leadership is, you got to go beyond tactics. You got to go beyond systems. You got to go beyond processes and coaching programs and putting something together. The way in which I work, is because I'm in their life with them. I see what's happening in real time. You had a guest on and talked about ambiguity before. People are afraid of the unknown, but they're not really afraid of what's unknown to them. They're afraid of what's still left unresolved within them. So they project outwards in the idea that if I can't control what's coming my way, if I can't break things down into steps so I can see how this is going to go down, I can't trust it. And that's in fact limiting you and your abilities to be more of what you say you want to be. So you've got to approach this completely different. And that's why I'm coming to the table talking about this with you today, is because my work has been so intimately different behind the scenes with those types of people like Tony, who are looking to become more optimized versions of themselves. So the impact that they have is highly sustainable and even more accelerated.
Thank you so much for stating that. I really appreciate the, breaking that down and really, pulling back the curtain of what's really required in order to make these transformations happen.
Yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you need a framework. You really need a framework, and you need it in a more intimate dynamic that is customized to who you are, not a cookie cutter thing that's presented to you that you get pulled into and you get lost into their creation and not creating from who you are. And I just wanted to make sure I added that. It's all about a framework in the right type of real-time environment. That's what the military does. There is no cookie cutter system aside from a structure and a framework of how boot camp or training or schools go, but there's so much more involved in it once you're in it.
Amazing. Yes, because the framework, directs the process, and the process is really what makes it work. And it works, like for for everybody and everything. I can name a million industries on why a process works as opposed to, just winging it and just being like, well, I'm super smart and I can make this happen.
Yeah, one
So
thing that I've done, like I worked with an info marketer in the personal development space, big name guy, and how in which the way our relationship went down and how we worked together, how I was able to accelerate him to the top of his game, get rid of all of his burnout, his frustration, he calls it being fried, so that his relationship with his wife was reignited. His kid actually grew and naturally evolved and felt more stress free in the family dynamic. He was able to sustain his income despite of making the money and then losing the money. All of those aspects are not going to apply to another leader that I work with. There are so many different variants that go on with someone who comes into this work with me because their lives are completely different. So I'm not going to take what I did with him and apply it to another person. Whatever happens with that person and why I'm brought into their life in the beginning is because they themselves need something uniquely different. And that's why I curated over the last 13 years a network of different experts and resources that I use in tandem with me in my work. It's not just me coming to the table saying I know everything. It's like, here's the deal. Here's my wisdom. Here's what I'm capable of and what I can see. I have this network, and we're going to holistically and radically transform you from the inside out in real time through real world challenges so that you can accelerate to the top of your game. And then I can get out of your life, get out of your way, and you can go off and do your best work yet. That's my job.
I love it. Wiley, thank you so much for sharing that. Can you
Yeah,
please let
absolutely.
everyone know how they can learn more about you and how they can reach out to you directly if they want to learn more?
Absolutely. Well, I created time2erupt.com that directly links them to wyliemcgraw.com. So if somebody's listening to this right now while they're working out, they're not going to remember how to spell my name. So just know time2erupt.com is a forwarding domain that'll take you right to wyliemcgraw.com, where you can peruse all the philosophies that I have around performance and leadership development, understanding the helping versus optimizing aspect that you and I talked about today. Or they can go to linkedin.com/Wylie McGraw as well, where I'm going to start putting out campaigns of new insights that challenge people's thinking, that radically start to shift the paradigm of when it comes to leadership and how we're supposed to really evolve who we are as a human being to the top of our game so that the impact we have out in the world is exponential. Because what I care about the most for those that are listening is I'm appealing to those who want to go far beyond the traditional idea that success means that I've made a bunch of money, that I've become notable, and that I have a business that, quote, matters on the surface. And it's like my life at the end of the day is still not where I want it to be. If that's you, then feel free to reach out, because at the end of the day, I don't do sales funnels. I don't do sales tactics, marketing, email lists, etc. All I care about is real world conversation with people who really want to be at the top of their game sooner than later.
Amazing stuff. Wiley, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a great conversation. I love nerding out on this. I love talking about, like being able to really impress, the need to help people really improve themselves. And that's really the whole point of what I'm doing here with this podcast. And I love that your mission, coincides with that. So thank you so much
Absolutely,
for
brother.
joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, and I'll leave people with this. It's about optimization, and you want that break away from the helping field. Step into a whole new world that challenges you in ways that you've never been challenged, and that's what you're doing here. Is you're providing people the atmosphere and the environment to grasp into new concepts and new ideas that can shift the way that they approach their business. And if that's the tip I can leave with everyone, is step into a world of real challenge that actually rattles you from within, because I'm telling you, it'll bring forth more of what you're capable of.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much
brother.
for joining me today.
Absolutely.